My name is Nick Middleton. I live in Middle England in the mid-latitudes. I'm middle-aged, earning a middling salary, writing travel books and teaching geography at Oxford University. My life is extremely comfortable, or at least it was. Till one mild summer's day when I was thinking about the English obsession with weather. I had an idea for a book. We complain ceaselessly about our temperate climate. But what must it be like to live with real extremes? What was life like in the hottest, coldest, wettest and driest inhabited places on Earth? I put this question to my publisher, and to my horror, she said go and find out. In my mind's eye, the hottest inhabited place in the world had always been surrounded by sand, somewhere in the Middle East or the Sahara. And it's true, these places have had days that have got them into the record books. But for real heat all year round, I was heading for the northeastern tip of Ethiopia. For somewhere, lost in the furnace that is the Danakil Depression, lies Dalol, the hottest place on Earth. Every summer's day in the Danakil, the temperature tops 40 degrees Celsius. Only one group of people have managed to survive here, and as a child I'd read about the almost legendary toughness of the Afar. At last, I was going to see for myself how they have adapted to life in this hellhole. But I confess I was nervous. Few outsiders have ever visited the area, and the Afar have a fierce reputation. Yet without their help, I'd never make it to Dalol. I thought it best to break myself into the world of desert survival gently. So I was starting my journey 15 degrees north of the Danakil. I'd come to Siwa, an oasis town in the middle of the Sahara Desert that's the starting point for expeditions into the Great Sand Sea. I was here to meet Mohammed Fayez, a man with 10 years expedition experience. And with one look at my suburban physique, he decided to throw me in at the deep end.
You just need to, take out all of this kind of poison from the modern cities.
Right.
And come back to nature, to zero,
Okay.
and start again.
So how long does it go on for?
The first 20 minutes is the horrible thing.
Horrible thing.
Yeah, and you still have another 1 hour for middle horror, or middle horrible.
So, hang on, horrible thing and then middle horror.
Yeah. And after that you'll be okay, more than okay, you'll be just ready for everything.
Mohammed was taking me for a crash course in heat acclimatization at the surgery of his doctor, a few kilometers into the desert.
You will keep remembering me all of your life. For that one.
Oh, thanks, Mohammed. Yeah, that's an interesting prospect.
Yeah.
I'm sure I will. For 25 years, Dr. Abu El Qassam has been harnessing heat for therapy.
He's now saying like you won't be staying more than 15 minutes inside the hall.
It's just the 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Despite Mohammed's warning that the first 20 minutes was horrible, this man seemed to be doing okay. Are you enjoying it, sir?
والترجمة محمد فايز.
مبسوط انت من الموضوع ده؟
يس نقول له مبسوط بيكم.
She's very happy to see you doing it.
Yeah.
إنما من الرملة لا.
But from the sand he doesn't like it. He's waiting for you to do it.
Yeah, okay, right. Step into my grave. Dr. Kassam's patients claim relief from ailments as varied as arthritis and high blood pressure. The first of his 3 heat treatments is meant to bring on an intense bout of sweating. The toxin-laden fluids soak away into the sand, leaving your body purified. like a return to childhood being buried on the beach. More sand. Now, is this the point at which you pour honey on my face and get the marching ants out from your pocket? Yeah. The midday sun took care of my paranoia, and the heat started to have an almost magical effect.
Nick, are you still here?
Yeah, 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 I can feel my fingers pulsing.
Try to move it.
No, I can't move my fingers at all. After 15 minutes, it was time for treatment number 2. An hour and a half in a stifling tent wrapped in a coarse blanket. Then, still barely conscious, I was carted off for treatment number 3, about which Mohammed had told me nothing. Of the 3 processes that I've been through, and I feel as if I've been through it today, massage was the worst because it involved some significant pain. And, well, I feel as if I've been initiated, but I have a feeling it's sort of, well, it's as much a sort of mental thing as a physical thing. Mohammed, explain to me just how this is preparing me for anything natural, because it seems profoundly unnatural to me.
It's just like trying to make you more fit for the job.
More fit?
Yeah.
Assuming I survive, eh?
Yeah. No pain, no gain.
The following day, Mohammed started to insinuate that my desert legs weren't up to it. To prove his point, he was taking me to meet some Bedouin, real desert people.
People of the desert in the summer doesn't move.
They don't move at all during summer.
They just find the location of water and just settle. Those people are very adapted to heat.
Yeah, right.
And you want to go to this depression in the summer. I think you're crazy, my friend.
This is my mission, to find out what it's like in the hottest place on earth.
You are very brave, mate.
Yeah, thank you.
But I doubt you're gonna make it.
Mohammed's skepticism had planted the first seeds of doubt in my head. If the Bedouin, the big boys of the desert, just find water and stay put during the summer, how on earth was I going to get to the heart of the Danakil Depression?
Alhamdulillah.
Nick.
Salam alaikum.
Alhamdulillah.
اسمك ايه من الحق؟
اسمي ناصر.
His name is Nasser.
Nasser.
This is Nick.
ناصر.
Nasser explained that he and his family would be here for 5 months, after which they'd begin their 600-kilometre wander to the coast and back, returning here or somewhere like it next summer.
So this guy is wearing how much clothes now in this heat, and you can be a
Yeah, I know,
Steven
that's
shirt,
right.
me and you.
Yes,
And
exactly.
you can just cope with it, no problem.
Are you chilly, Nasser?
حاسس إن
Are
أنت
you cold?
حران؟ حاسس إنت بردان؟
شيء الحر.
He said this is for the heat.
Okay, right. Nasser's thick vest was one thing, but the man tending the goats appeared to be wearing a greatcoat. These guys could certainly handle the heat. And to further undermine my confidence, Mohammed started grilling me about my knowledge of desert survival.
Do you know anything about the stars?
Not a great deal, Mohammed, I have to say.
So you don't know how to locate yourself by the stars?
No.
Anything about the sun? How to use the matches to locate yourself with the sun?
No?
No.
No.
So why don't you just do me a favor and go home?
It was back to basics. If the surface of your brain heats by just 2 degrees, the cells will start to cook. Always keep your head covered. If you're lost in the desert, you don't need a compass. You can just use the shadow cast by a match to work out which way is north. And even if you're out of water, all is not necessarily lost.
In case you are totally desperate.
Dormant snails found in the earth surrounding dried up waterholes could throw you a lifeline.
Each one can give you 1 day or 1 day and a half without water.
Oh, really?
So you can carry. Yeah, you think it's,
that's amazing,
it's fun.
isn't it? Yeah.
No, it's not
well,
fun.
no, I'm sure it's
Smell
not
it
fun.
and you know it's not fun. It's terrible.
Oh, God.
Yeah. No, you just destroyed it.
Shit, sorry.
Shit.
Oh, okay. So it's just like that, right?
Yeah, keep on sucking it.
Suck.
Yeah,
rather than eat.
well, enjoy that. No, put it inside your mouth and keep on sucking it.
Oh, shit. The lesson continued in NASA's tent, and I realised that desert survival is often a counterintuitive game. Don't pitch your tent near water, that's where the snakes hang out. Always take a blanket as well as a water bottle, because in deserts more people die of hypothermia than from dehydration. By the end of the afternoon, the main thing I'd learnt was how little I knew. The next day I flew south, bound for Dalol, the hottest place on Earth, and I didn't even know where it was. In England, 3 different maps had put it in 3 different places. To find it, my best chance was to consult with the FR. In the bustling city of Addis Ababa, capital of Ethiopia, I spent 2 days trying to find out more about the Afar. The only texts I could find were 2 written in the 30s. Both concurred that they were a bloodthirsty tribe who had a particular hatred for foreigners.
Reading Nesbit and Thesiger, and the only thing they disagree on is what the Afar do with your balls after they chop them off. Nesbit says they hang them round their neck as an ornamentation, and Thesiger says they just parade them through town and then chuck them away. But neither's particularly comforting.
Next morning, after a sleepless night, I left the cool Ethiopian highlands with my driver, Faka, and headed for the desert. We drove west, and in 5 hours we dropped 2,000 meters, and the temperature rose from a balmy 22 to 38 degrees Celsius, 100 degrees Fahrenheit.
It was like coming down into a great boiling cauldron down here. It would have been nice to go straight back to Addis.
I had arrived in the southern tip of the Danakil Desert. I was 1.5 days from Addis Ababa, and we were skirting the southern edge of the Danakil Desert. The heat was overpowering, but there weren't the searing blue skies of the Sahara, just an oppressive, dust-laden haze that seemed to make it difficult to breathe. On my way to the hottest town on Earth, Dalol, to the north of the desert, I was stopping off at Elidar to get some advice on how to deal with the Afar. Everyone I'd spoken to so far said that the fearsome warriors of this nomadic tribe should be approached with caution, so it was with some trepidation that I arrived at this tiny settlement in a field of rocks. I'd come here to meet 2 Afar experts. Ismail Ali Gard and his wife Valerie from Australia run an Afar Development Association and have spent the last 10 years working with the tribe throughout the Danakil.
Before I came down into the Danakil, before the major sources of information I had were these two old traveller camps, and according to those, castration was a big issue.
Castration, Ismail. Border Kalana.
Do Afar warriors still practice castration of foreigners?
Many people are saying like that because in ancient time there was a war between the Highlanders and Afars. These Highlanders started doing that.
The Highlanders started castrating
They
people.
started to do it. And at the same time, I think the Afar was doing against them.
Yeah, in retaliation.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wasn't entirely convinced, but to be honest, on my first day in the desert, I simply didn't have the energy to worry about it.
It's just relentless. And trying to do physical activity in it is not easy. I suppose you get used to it. I mean, I've only been down here for a day, so perhaps I'm still becoming acclimatized. But there's no doubt in my mind that everything is an effort here.
Even at night there was no respite. The temperature didn't fall below 30 degrees and there was a fierce hot wind.
I'm not claustrophobic, but I can see what claustrophobia would be like, because if I really did want to get out of this heat, well, I couldn't, or it would take a day to get out. If I was claustrophobic, I think that's what it would feel like, because you're totally surrounded and there's no way out.
Next morning I awoke with the goats, and as breakfast was being prepared, it became apparent that life for these people is a hard grind. They're dependent on their goats for milk, traded grain for bread, and that is practically all they eat. No vegetables and precious little meat. Valerie told me over breakfast that this meagre diet led to an array of medical complaints. But the real problem, predictably enough, was water. After 36 hours of doing nothing, Valerie decided I'd had enough acclimatization and should spend the day with the women. One of their jobs is to collect the water.
It's 20 kilometres, so it'll take us 3 hours, I reckon.
Right, that's some distance to go, isn't it?
Yes.
And what's the lady doing there?
She's
knitting while she goes.
It's like knitting. It's the weaving of the mat. So she's going to do this until she comes back, and then when she comes back, offload the water and then start the housework. So...
Never ending.
Yes. So,
Well, we'll see how I survive.
yes.
Are we ready to make a move?
Yes. Well, let's go.
Let's go.
Hey.
Living so far from water might seem nonsensical, but the Afar are pastoral nomads who move on as the grazing in a particular spot runs out. The ground near to water tends to be the most heavily grazed, so as the summer goes on, the further they have to walk.
Collecting water is purely women's work then, is it?
Absolutely. In fact, men think it's a shame to do that, which is...
One way out of it.
Yeah.
The Afar women have a hell of a day. Up at dawn, make breakfast, pack up the livestock, walk 40 kilometres, weaving and herding as you go, and return to camp in time to clean the huts and make dinner. All without any shade in mind-melting heat. I know I'm losing vast amounts of moisture, but I never feel wet. My shirt's not damp at all. It just sucks it out of you like a giant dehumidifier. It was only 10 a.m. and the temperature on my tireless mini-met station read 43 degrees Celsius. A couple of degrees off the hottest bath my body could tolerate.
You just feel that your body's a machine that you have to keep dosing with water, because otherwise it's just going to shrivel up like a prune and die.
In a landscape as barren as this, that there was any water at all seemed miraculous. I was longing for a palm-fringed oasis, but when we arrived at the waterhole, it became clear that down here in the Danakil, nothing is that easy. This was no oasis.
There's a supreme irony in coming 20 kilometres to get a hot water spring.
You can see it dripping down in there, you know.
This is like a sort of permanent structure, is it, that's been built over a crack in the earth?
Yes. In this landscape, there is no other water.
The Afar have learned to take advantage of geothermal vents. Steam from the Earth's interior condenses on the inside of this rock cairn and then dribbles down into a specially constructed pool.
Is that hot?
لي ما نيني يا
اسمع انت
لي ما نيني
اسمع انت يابا
Yeah, that is hot.
انت
Huh? He's asking me, he's asking me, do I want to drink it? Not now. I haven't got a tea bag to
Didn't
dip
bring
in.
a tea bag. Oh,
Yes, no
damn.
tea bag to dip in.
Amazingly, each of these wells can produce 2 bathfuls of water a day. Spotting the right places to dig to find the vents is an art in itself. But where there's grass, there's probably steam.
Yeah, very red clay and, gosh, yeah, moist and hot.
Really?
It can take a week to construct one of these cairns, and once they're built, they last for up to 10 years. But despite their ingenuity, a 40-kilometre round trip seemed like a very long way to go for a drink of water. Tomorrow, Ishmael was accompanying me northwards, but in my 3 days with Mr. Sultan and his family, I'd not only allayed my fears about the Afar, but I was even learning to handle the evening heat.
It's better than drinking it.
Under Mr. Sultan's watchful eye, I even tried talking to his women, asking via Valerie whether I might ever make a good husband for an Afar woman.
Do it away on the high.
It's so clearly such a horrible thought that they're lost for words. They're kind and diplomatic, they don't want to say anything rude, I can tell. Message received.
Message received?
On our route north, Ishmael insisted we stop at Allahabad, where the hot springs were spectacular evidence of the tectonic activity that contributes to the Danakil superheated climate.
Not all the water's hot then.
Yes, the cold water is, the hot water is there.
Yeah.
It's so hot here because it's a desert so close to the equator. Most places on its latitude are hot and wet, and the clouds shield the land from the fierce equatorial sun. But the Danakil has little cloud cover because most of the prevailing winds are from the northeast, the dry heart of Arabia. The final seal to its fate is that the Danakil is the northernmost part of the African Rift Valley, still being formed as the Arabian plate tears itself away from the African mainland. Up around Dalal, in the north of the desert, the altitude drops to as much as 100 metres below sea level. The steep walls of this depression further buffer it from oceanic influences. Little wonder then that day in, day out, it's the hottest place on Earth. My geological reverie was interrupted by the sight of 3 gun-toting, knife-wielding Afar warriors.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thankfully, Ishmael was there to effect introductions.
Assalamu alaikum.
And with him at my side, I cut straight to the chase. I needed to know whether their battery of weapons were for real or just for show.
Gosh, it's beautiful, isn't it? And big too.
Yes.
It's very clean. Has it been used very often?
I didn't kill anybody, but I kill animal by this.
Ah, okay. But he doesn't kill people.
No.
Hayu Yassin hadn't killed anybody with his AK-47 either. The guys were all under 20, and in many ways they were typical teenagers, obsessed with weapons and hair.
It's a sign of being a real man or a proud man.
Yes, yes.
A proud warrior, perhaps. Does it take a long time to do it up every day?
It takes now a little bit.
A little bit of time.
It takes 3 hours.
Gosh.
Hanging out with these guys for an afternoon brought home to me that physiologically I was in a different league.
Where did that go?
Not because I'm balding and a lousy shot, but because my short, squat body, which should have been ideal for wrestling, just faded in the heat. These guys, with their high ratio of surface area to body volume, could lose heat far quicker than me. They knew they could outperform me, and to prove it, they challenged me to join them the next day for a game of Corso, the Afar's national sport. The next morning, we turned up at Hayu's village in time for the start of the team warm-up. How many more to come on this team?
Maybe more, another 40, 30, maybe.
40 or 30, really?
Yeah.
So you could have 50 on each side?
Oh, it's one side can be 50, one side can be 100. They don't mind.
So it doesn't matter if they're unequal?
Yes, they don't mind.
I was struggling to grasp the rules, but if I was to make it to Dalol, I reckon my mid-latitude body could do with the training. It was only when I saw the opposition that I had second thoughts, and Ishmael's warning that you could expect anything from sprained ankles to broken necks loomed large. But as the two teams started to process towards each other, I was kitted out, and it was too late to back down. I'm just a bit concerned that I'm not going to have the entire colonial history of Europe in Africa on my back, particularly since the white man's only on one side and not on the other, and the other side are a bit pissed off about that. I was also worried that it was 9 AM, touching 40, and we were still just warming up. How long was I going to be able to last? After a final frenzied bout of jumping and clapping, we were off. I didn't know the rules, but I followed the crowd. Predictably enough, pretty soon the crowd was following me, as the opposition decided the softest player on the pitch would provide a quick kill. Once they dealt with the intrusive foreigner, they got going in earnest. It seemed the game was a cross between tag and American football. Someone gets nominated and runs like the clappers, while the opposite team try and catch him, and his team try and defend him. Once he feels he's run far enough, he claims a point. And if the judges agree, they fire their Kalashnikovs. Though I couldn't tell you how, a ball is involved, and the pitch seemed to have no boundaries at all. Apart from being unable to tell who was on which team, the heat was insufferable, and after just 20 minutes I was finished.
They're definitely tough, willowy, sturdy people. I mean, those guys, they were playing for 4 hours.
Only after lying in the shade for the rest of the afternoon could I even stand for the post-match celebrations. So, does this mean we won?
Yes.
Seriously?
Yeah.
My team won?
Yes.
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 I've no idea how.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. I don't think I made any contribution at all.
What's concerning me now is the heat itself, because down here at least there's some shade. About the north trees with no shade, that is potentially life-threatening.
Leaving Hayu and the team celebrating victory, I continued my journey north, skirting the Danakil and heading for Bahale. Ishmael had said that if anyone could pinpoint the location of Dalol, the salt traders could. Bahale is a nexus for the salt trade, and since few other people have a reason to brave the heat of the depression, it seemed like the logical place to go. This unprepossessing little town wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the mineral wealth of the Danakil. Each year, according to the traders, 1 million camels pass through here on their way to the Afar miners, scraping away at the surface of the depression. The scrupulously polite Mr. Bizrat, my interpreter for this stage of the journey, was one of the few people in the area who could speak English. He suggested we talk to the village elders, and it was here that my trip received a severe blow. The mullah, Shah Ali, and the caravan leader, Belair Shoba, explained that Dalol was an area, not a settlement. They guessed that the place in the record books was a US potash mine that had been abandoned in the 1960s. It was a huge disappointment, but I got this far and I wasn't about to turn back.
And can he do that for me?
I'd come to see how people cope with life in extreme heat, and what better way of doing that than accompanying a salt caravan to the Danakil salt mines. A rather large amount of Ethiopian birr changed hands and the deal was done.
There we are. Thank you very much.
According to Mr. Belair, I was about to become the first European to accompany the salt traders on their route to the mines.
I'm saying that we haven't seen such white people walking down there. It's very, very difficult to cross, especially one particular place called Gara. It's awful and very difficult place.
I don't want it easy, Mr. Bizrat.
No, it's difficult.
You don't ride the camels at all, you just use them as pack animals.
I have to admit that I had expected to ride the camels down. I mean, they're not actually carrying anything much. But no, we're going to walk, and it's a 3-day walk there and a 3-day walk back. And I actually don't remember last time I walked 3 days in a row. Anywhere, actually. I'm not really used to walking large distances. It's going to be stupidly hot down there. I just know it. And I hope I don't come back strapped to a camel with heat stroke.
Mr. Belair insisted I'd be cooler on the journey in native dress. I felt just like an Afar, apart from my hat and possibly my shoes. We were leaving the next morning, and it was time to join the throng at the well to fill up with our most crucial supply. It was a 2-day walk to the next drinking water, and on my daily consumption, I was going to need at least 1 goatskin, or 20 litres. Messrs. Bizrat and Belair, used to the heat, needed only half that amount, so we filled 2. Thankfully, en route to the Danakil, it was the camels that carried the water. Next morning, we were up at 5 a.m. packing and marshalling the caravan. By 6, I was given the honour of leading off this caravan heading for hell.
I'm surprised to myself that so far you didn't demand any water.
Yeah, well.
Mr. Bizrat didn't appear to have much faith in my endurance, but then the logistics of this journey are pretty finely judged. It was a 6-day round trip that was so punishing that after it, both man and camel had to have 2 weeks rest. Mr. Bizrat said that it was something called the Gara, or fire wind, that really took it out of you. We'd be facing that tomorrow, and from the look of the other caravans returning laden with salt, it wasn't going to be fun.
I'm not looking forward to that fire wind.
Oh,
Sounds like you're going into hell.
burns you, you know. It's very tough.
Yeah, sounds
Very
it.
tough.
Our route followed a ravine which sliced through the foothills of the Simeon Mountains. After about 25 kilometres, we came across the welcome sight of caravans resting, a sign that we too were about to stop for the rest of the day.
With the guys, I was sort of keeping a stiff upper lip, but I'm knackered. I don't think I'm drinking enough water either, because I really am sweating buckets. So I hope we have a decent rest here, and then continue.
It was day 2 of the journey, the day of the fire wind. But the trader spirits were high, as after a restful night further up the ravine, we approached Asabolo. Emerging from the ravine, I was confronted by more camels than I'd ever seen before. It was a vital spot on the salt route, for reasons to do with camel physiology. For this was the last drink they'd get until they returned in 2 days' time, having been in and out of the depression. In temperatures of 50 degrees, that's as long as the traders let their camels go without water.
That feels very good. Very good indeed.
Let's take the advantage of this beautiful blessed water.
Yeah.
So
The last bit of blessed water.
how do you feel anyway?
Feel okay actually. Very good for all this water. But I have to say, I am looking forward to the next bit, but I'm also a bit afraid.
Asabolo had the feeling of a holiday camp, since all anyone did there was wash themselves, feed their camels, and take drugs. Before Mr. Belair shared out the cat, or mirror, he led us in prayers for our safe return from the Danakil. Mirror is the Ethiopian equivalent of the coca leaf, and Mr. Belair and his team used it to prepare themselves for the ordeal that lay ahead, the Gara.
Sheikh Bala is saying that while we chew the mira, it keeps you wake up your mind and concentrate on something.
We spent the rest of the morning chewing, but at 2 p.m. the ordeal started. It goes against every rule of desert survival to travel in the heat of the day, but we were doing just that. Needless to say, it's all down to the camels. The last staging post en route to the mine is Hamadella, which lies on the very edge of the depression, still 3 hours' walk from the mine itself. At Hamadella there isn't enough water for the camels, and when there's no water, the traders prefer to rest the camels in the cool of the night. Therefore they always time their 6-hour walk to Hamadella in order to arrive in the evening. The big drawback is that you have to walk through the Gara.
Is this as strong as it gets, Mr. Bizra?
Yeah, this is just nothing, sir.
What do you mean this is nothing?
This is nothing.
It's blowing half a gale.
Most deserts have their winds, the Harmattan in the Sahara, the Santa Ana in California, but the Gara was the nastiest I'd experienced.
I really never learned my lesson. When I heard about this fire wind, I thought it sounded like an interesting piece of meteorology, which it is, I suppose, but it's also indescribably hot, as well as the sun. It really is like, it's like an inferno, and it's just, the power is extraordinary, and it's dry, just so dry.
I felt like a chicken inside a fan-assisted oven. If there was any consolation, it was that you didn't suffer alone. The caravan now stretched as far as I could see.
Are we? That's right. Are we nearly there?
Yeah.
I was so shattered by the time we got to Hamadella that I could do nothing but collapse and sleep. The morning ritual was becoming horribly familiar. Up at 4:30, saddle the camels and move off. Only today, we were heading 3 hours into the middle of the hottest salt flat in the world. The sun was hidden by the ever-present haze, but as we left, the temperature was already 39 degrees. By the time we got there, it was 46, and we were walking on salt up to 5 kilometers deep, deposited over hundreds of thousands of years as the seawater that used to fill this depression evaporated.
Well done.
We're here.
Well
Dear
done,
me.
You're the man.
You're the man too, mate.
Fantastic.
Wow. I've never seen anything like this before in my
Yeah.
entire life. If they were in England, the health and safety executive would make them wear goggles.
The typical Afar miner's working day goes something like this. 4 a.m, get up and walk 3 hours to the salt mine. 7 a.m, start cutting or shaping or loading salt. 1 p.m, stop and walk 3 hours back to Hamadella through the hottest part of the day. All that 6 days a week in return for a maximum of $28, if you cut a hell of a lot of blocks and struck a hell of a good deal with the trader you sold to.
So, this side first. It's not an easy object to handle, is it?
I'm saying if he's tried 2 days, he will be perfect. But right now, he's not good enough.
Okay, so I need a couple of days training.
Yes.
Right.
So you are going to stay here 2 days.
Having failed as a shaper, I tried my hand at cutting, but that was even worse.
Well, I certainly couldn't be a cutter, and I'm not really into trading that much because there's too much walking involved. I think, Mr. Bizrat, what I'm going to be is that middleman who hires out the camels, sits in his office and takes a 50% cut, probably drinking cold water while he's doing it.
Yeah, it's better.
It was such hard work and such a tough environment that I could scarcely believe there'd ever been a permanent settlement in this hellhole. But as 1 p.m. approached and everyone was preparing to evacuate, Mr. Bizrat and I started quizzing some miners, having a quick cup of tea before they headed home.
Thank you very much. I don't know if it's a town or a mine, but it's a specific settlement. Could you ask them?
So I'm here, but I'm not quite here. But having talked to some of the cutters, they're telling me Dalol, the settlement, is about 15 kilometres up that way, which is good, I suppose, but it's not good because I've got to walk there, and it's 50 degrees, and the wind is extremely hot, and I can feel it burning through my shoes when I touch the rocks, and I am looking forward to it, but I'm almost all in.
In reality, it was 5 days before I reached Dalol. From Hamadella, it was too far for the camels, and we couldn't carry enough water to survive. The only way we could get there was to be dropped in by air. But nothing could have prepared me for the landscape we passed. An American mining company came to this alien place to mine phosphate. They even built a railway to bring the water in and take the phosphate away. But they only managed to last for 6 years.
Well, this is Dalol, Mr. Bizrat.
Yeah,
But it must be the most desolate ghost town I've ever seen.
yeah. Not even an insect.
No, no flies. And weird.
Weird.
Very weird. But I don't feel a sense of elation or excitement. It's just a feeling of strangeness about this place. And it seems now as if I really am in the bowels of the earth. All of those primal elements bubbling up. The sulphur towers. I mean, these people came and they thought they had an economic reason, but the economics didn't work out. It's almost as if Mother Nature accepts visitors but no permanent settlers. And where that leaves the record for the hottest inhabited place on Earth, I'm not sure. I guess it must be Hamidella, where those strong miners hang out. And that also sort of seems appropriate because it's just on the edge of the depression. And people venture in, but they don't stay. Because this isn't a place for people to stay.